No doubt that ripeners play a very big role in our industry. Um, when you look at the amount of acres we've gained just from the industry growing, um, hats off to the processors who process over 16.6 million tons of cane this year. When you look at our start dates, we're starting in September without the hurricanes and trouble getting people in because of COVID. I think we would have started a little early at a few factories, but you don't have to go back too far to the 2019 crop to see what's our biggest threat as for our industry, and that's freeze. Um, with that said, we have to start processing cane in the month of September if we're going to be successful. I put up here the average TRS of a couple of trowels from St. Gabriel with 299. And these are hand cut, hand clean cane. So we're looking somewhere in the 175 to 180 range for the last 3 years. When you put that down to a real world situation with a mill where you have trash and such coming in, those are 140s. We can't operate this industry profitably without ripeners, and they definitely play a very big role. Let's talk about the influence of treatment to harvest interval early in the season. Um, we did some work in St. Gabriel at the Sugar Research Station. We put out our first ripener on August 10th, um, and we harvested this trowel on September 22nd. This gave us a 43-day ripener interval. We also put a second application on different plots on August 21st, and that gave us a 32-day treatment to harvest interval. And then we also included an untreated check to compare with. So when we look at our TRS values from the application made on August 10th, definitely our highest TRS, 255 pounds of sugar per ton. When we go delay that application by 11 days, the TRS values was 219, the check a 174. So no doubt from a TRS standpoint, big gains. When we look at tonnage, putting it out that early, we're still in the grand growth phase, especially with that August 10th application. We lost about 6 tons compared to the untreated check. I'm not sure how we only lost 1 ton with the August 21st application, but that's the data. But when we look at sugar per acre, that's what we get paid on as from a farm standpoint. Definitely putting out ripener had a major benefit, over 1,100 pounds of sugar in both cases. So if you dig a little deeper into this, you can talk about just the pure increases in terms of TRS compared to the untreated control. So at 43 days, we had a 47% increase in TRS compared to a 26% increase in TRS. But I had a grower pose the question to me, well, what value are you starting at when you're applying the ripener, and what kind of impact are you having on it? And at first I dismissed it, and he continued to push me, and it made me ask that question. So we actually went and sampled the cane prior to the application of the ripener on August 11th. And we had 87 pounds of sugar per ton on that day. So if you do a little math, if you look at how many pounds of sugar did we gain by the time we harvested this test, for the August 10th application, we gained 168 pounds of sugar per ton, or 3.9 pounds of sugar per day. For the August 21st application, we gained about 110 pounds, and I got a little asterisk there. I assumed about 2 pounds per day. It was put out 11 days later, but 110. But you gain 3.4 pounds of sugar per day. And the natural ripening from the untreated check, we gained about 87 pounds, which is 2 pounds per day. So to me, this creates an opportunity for us to do some deeper thinking and some deeper learning here in the future about really the impact. It's not a linear increase that we're seeing is what these data indicate to me. Um, we're going to talk about the influence of glyphosate rates early in the season. Also, we did some work where we put it out a little earlier. We put this stuff out on August 4th on some 613. We had a couple different treatments. We put out almost a half rate of glyphosate, and there's been a trend to some growers trying to put out less glyphosate, a lower glyphosate dose, but for an extended amount of time. We also included that 3-ounce rate plus intake, the standard 5.3 ounce rate, and we had an untreated check for comparison. And we also harvested this test on September 22nd. And the treatment to harvest interval was 49 days on this study. When we look at TRS, we got our best response from the 5.3 ounces at that length of time. Not surprising. The 3 ounces of PowerMax increased TRS above the untreated check in the neighborhood of about 30 pounds. When we did the combination of PowerMax at 3 ounces plus 8 ounces of intake, not a improvement of in sugar per ton as compared to the PowerMax alone. Tons per acre, we took a pretty big whack with this variety. Losing 9 tons at 49 days with 5.3 ounces. That's hard to overcome. When we look at sugar per acre, not a whole lot of difference statistically, numerically though, in these cases with this ripener at 49 days, we actually decrease sugar per acre, and that's not the objective of using ripener for our industry. Experimental compounds, always looking for new options. We did this work on some 299 at the Sugar Research Station. Looked at Caprino. Caprino's a herbicide that is used in the corn industry. Actually had looked at it in some invasive grass control work and saw some interesting things. So I thought it may fit somewhere into that mix. Clethodim, this is a product. It's another herbicide. It is used in South America, to somewhat in Argentina. They prefer it to glyphosate. So we wanted to evaluate it. Glucopro was a product brought to me by Lucas Petrie in the northern part of the industry. And he just had some interest in the product because it showed some benefit in sugar beets. So we went ahead and put these products out. We sampled these plots, hand cut 10 stalk samples at 37 days after application and at 53 days after application. First of all, the Caprino and Clethodim are herbicides. They're the EPA has not registered these products for use, and we only look at them in an experimental way. So I want to make that disclaimer before we get any further. In terms of what product gave us our most ripening capacity, that would be the Clethodim. Statistically better, both at 37 and at 53 days above the untreated check. I see some potential in the Caprino. That 1.5 ounce rate, that was a rate I just decided on. I think we need to modify it. I really like it. It does not kill the top of that cane. It doesn't blow the top out. So you still continue to have some vegetative growth. It kind of reminds me a lot of like Modus, what we see with that. The Glucopro response, no response at 37 days. But as we get out to 53 days, we're starting to see about a 10-pound pickup. So we'll look at that product some more in the future. One of the things that I did not like about the Clethodim was what it did to the stalk. If you look at that picture, that single stalk on the right-hand side of your screen, it made it like it almost cut that stalk 3/4 of the way through. Definitely blew the top out, blew out the apical meristem, and the vegetative growth stopped with that compound. We also were contacted by MA Patu to look at another product. that they had a company that was trying to sell a new ripener into the market called FiberTech. Um, there was no university or USDA data associated. They just had testimonials from the company, and they asked us to look at this product. So we put it out on August 20th at the Sugar Research Station, again on some $2.99. The FiberTech had two parts to that material. We put out part A at 16 ounces and part B at 256 ounces per acre. We also included Roundup Power Max as our standard, and we had an untreated check. And here we sampled the plots at 42, 48, and 56 days after application. Cane was harvested on October 15th. The cane was lodged from the hurricane. One of them would pass, but when we look at the data, regardless if we look at 42 all the way to 56 days out, the FiberTech product had no improvement in TRS compared to the untreated check at any of those points. And if you look at the industry standard, the Power Max at 5.3 ounces, significant increase over time compared to the standard, the FiberTech or the untreated control. In terms of tonnage per acre, a little numerical decrease that we see with Power Max, about 3.5 tons, right in line where we would think that'd be. Sugar per acre, no statistical difference, but our highest sugar per acre was obtained with the Power Max. And another point they were pushing is that it would reduce stalk fiber. We didn't see that in the lab. The fibers all remain the same. Some of our commercial experiments that we did in 2020, we had a couple of those go out. The first one was done at 90 South Farms. It was done in coordination with Mr. Chris Gravois. I want to thank Mr. Tom Wolf with T&M Aviation for applying these treatments, and also Dr. Ryan Viator and his technician, Mr. Heath, for helping harvest and getting these plots out as well. So we had a couple different treatments. We went with our standard 5.3 ounce rate of Power Max. We also included half rate of Power Max for another treatment. The third treatment was a half rate of Power Max plus 8 ounces of intake, and we had an untreated check, and we harvested this on October 11th. And thankfully, Dr. Rich Johnson came to my rescue with his weigh wagon because we had some issues that day. When we look at TRS, we ran the samples two different ways. We cut a 10-stalk sample, and we also collected billeted samples from the weigh wagon. We pressed the billeted samples at the lab. TRS, the values were not statistically different, but we had our highest sugar with the Power Max treatments. Surprisingly here, when you look at it numerically, there's not a whole lot of difference between a half rate of Power Max versus the standard rate of 5.3 ounces. We're not seeing any difference in tonnage to speak of among these treatments. This cane was pretty large, pretty severely. The hurricane passed a whole lot closer to that Raceland area than it did to St. Gabriel. When we look at our sugar per acre, regardless if it's the press or the NIR, still no statistical differences compared to the untreated control. Numerically, we had a little decrease when we added that intake to the mix. So, that's a little bit concerning to me. Our second commercial experiment was done in Cheneyville with a Harper Planning Partnership. McCaleb's Flying Service supplied it with the airplane for us. These treatments were applied on September 30th, midway through the early part of the season. Again, we had a standard with Power Max 5.3 ounces. We had a half rate of Power Max plus ANOVA at 16 ounces was our second treated and an untreated control. The plot size on this was very large, about 3-acre plots. And it was harvested on November 16th. In this situation, we took 10 stalk samples, and we also looked at our core weights from the trucks that brought this cane to the Lasuka mill. As far as statistical differences, we don't see any statistical differences in TRS. Numerically, it looks a lot better where we have Power Max or Power Max ANOVA compared to the untreated check. When you look at the core value data, the Power Max ANOVA actually looked a little better numerically, but again, not statistically. Tonnage wasn't a whole lot different. And then when we look for sugar per acre differences, no statistical differences. In both of these cases, the large scale experiments, this crop naturally matured very well this year. And we had very little benefit as we got later and later into the season from our ripener, which is what we've seen in the past. Typically, it takes about till Thanksgiving to naturally mature, but in these cases, we actually matured that cane a little bit quicker. So just to kind of wrap it up and summarize some of the things that we saw, measured from the time of glyphosate ripener application, the gain in sugar accumulation per day averaged 3.9 pounds for the 40-day treatment to harvest interval, 3.4 pounds for the 32-day treatment to harvest interval, and 2 pounds per day under natural conditions. I had some slides that got cut out by somehow. We also did look at variety response. 615 and 201 were moderately responsive to some of the ripener work we put out, about 23% gain. 739 was only moderate, but its level of sugar was really high early in the season. And I have this statement: on September 23rd and October 21st, unripened 739 yielded 215 and 250 pounds of sugar per ton, respectively, indicating this variety is an early maturing variety. I think our breeding program did a fantastic job bringing this variety. The ripener additives intake in ANOVA provided no benefit in terms of improving TRS, tonnage, or sugar yield in 2020 as compared to glyphosate alone. These results are consistent with the results of the ripener research conducted in 2018 and 2019 at LSU and USDA with these products, and I'd extend that to Be Sure as well. So with that, thanks, and any questions?
Yes, Stephania has her hand up. Stephanie, if you could go ahead and unmute.
It's Gillian. I just want to ask you, thanks, Al, nice presentation. I wondered if you could just give us some more information on the differences in numbers you got between the NIR and the press and the core values. I noticed the press and the core values tended to be lower than the NIR values. Can you explain?
Well, Jillian, the NIR values are hand cut, hand clean cane. The press samples were from the billet samplers, so there was mud and leaf trash in there, just like with the core lab. I mean, that was from the truck. So you're on mute.
Oh, no. I thought that might be the case, but I wanted to ask. We're trying to develop a Orgeron NIR, but for the whole cane, not the clean cane, the whole thing. So that was why I was asking. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Dr. Orgeron? I have a question from Blaine Viatar. Can you comment on the possible differences between 613 as far as ripener response compared to commercial varieties?
No, I mean, 1613 is a commercial variety. You know, when we looked at it in this study, It wasn't the best block of cane. It was third stubble, so that tonnage wasn't that great. Off the top of my head, it responds pretty well. But what was so shocking is that big lack of tonnage that we saw with it, or really the impact from going up 49 days with that ripen.